Good evening, everybody. So, this is Laura at Healthy Carnivore. Tonight's discussion is not going to have anything to do with carnivore, keto, ketogenic, nothing related. So, I will give a little background for myself. So, I am a registered nurse. I have been a nurse for over 22 years. Um, and I have always believed in advocacy. I've always been the one to stand up for people when I was in school as a small child. The kids that were being picked on, the handicapped children that people were doing stuff. It's always been a pillar of who I am is to advocate for those who need advocacy. So I'm going to go over that tonight. In the last 3 weeks, I have seen the most dramatic increase in a lack of advocacy for patients, and not by because the patients aren't trying or the family isn't trying, but because the medical establishments, the last line of defense is the nurse taking care of the patient, whether that be home health in a clinic setting like a doctor's office or hospital, rehab, nursing home. Whatever the situation is, the nurse is supposed to be the last line of defense for advocacy. So I will go over what that is, and then I'll go over some of the things with that. Hello, Brenda, and hi, Simpson. So I'll give you the exact definition. So, advocacy is the act of speaking up or taking action to support, protect, or defend the rights and well being of others. In nursing, advocacy means ensuring the patients receive the best possible care, have their voices heard, and are protected from harm, whether that harm comes from the system, policies, or even medical professionals themselves. It includes things like informed consent, patient rights, ethical care, and standing up against unsafe or unethical practices. So, hey, Tara. So, just to kind of give you a little background on this, when I was charge nurse at a hospital years ago, I had a newer grad nurse. I mean, she had had her training and was out on her own at this point. Walk up to me to have a second. You had to have two signatures for morphine. Had to have two signatures for insulin, things like that. And she come out of the med room with 10 milligrams IV push in a carpy jet. And I said, "Who's that for?" And she says, "Oh, 212." Well, I was charge nurse that night, so I knew who all the patients were. And I'm like, 212, that's like 90 something and is opiate naive, has never had even a Tylenol, and we're going to give her 10 milligrams IV push morphine. And she was like, "Yep, it's what the doctor ordered." And I said, "Okay." So I take my jacket off and I'm like stretching out and I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm getting ready to do CPR because she's a full code." And I'm like, "You give her that, you're going to stop her respiratory drive and we will be doing CPR and she will die." And she was like, "Well, it's ordered." And I said, "I don't care." I'm like, "Weren't you trained in school advocacy?" Because it's not saying the doctors are intentionally trying to hurt people, but they might see 100 people between their clinic patients and the patients they come and look at the hospital in a day's time. And you, as a nurse, are going to have anywhere between, depending if you're ICU, CCU, you might have two patients up to 14. I had 14 patients at night all the time on the med surge floor. So you have a more intimate look at them. You're with them longer. And so if the doctor orders something, they might order it on the wrong patient accidentally. That is your job as a nurse to not perform that. You are never going to be able to be fired. You're never going to lose your license. None of this stuff is going to happen if you do not believe an order is what is right for that patient and you refuse to follow through with that order. Never, ever, ever. But I can promise you, if you go ahead and do the order and it kills the patient, they don't go after the doctor 90% of the time. They go after the nurse because you were the last person. It should have went through two people in order to be given, and you were the one who gave that to the patient. So that will cause you to lose your license. And nurses lose their license in all 50 states. Physicians lose their license in one state at a time, just so you know. back to the story of the gal with the 10 milligrams morphine push. Um, she goes, "Well, what did I do?" And I said, "Well, you call the doctor and you just say, hey, I maybe I put the decimal point down wrong. Did you mean point like 1 milligram, point 5? Like, let's give half or," and she was like, "He's gonna yell at me." And I said, "There again, that's okay. That's okay. You're a big girl. You're an adult. You have to stand up for this person." So she would not do it because she was bawling. So I called him and said, "Hey, I think you maybe gave the wrong order, wrong dose. This is this person. She's opiate naive. She's over 90. She's never taken a Tylenol. She's taken half of a tablet of aspirin if she had a massive headache. Do you want to change your order?" And he said, "Nope." And I said, "All right." And I said, "Well, it's 3:30 in the morning. You show up here at 6 to do rounds. You're welcome to give it at 6 o'clock in the morning because I'm not giving it." And of course, he, blew up and threw his little baby fit, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. And we didn't give it. And when he came in the morning, I met him at the room and I said, "Do you want to do the morphine? You'll have to sign in to be able to get it out of the Pyxis. I will not pull that from the Pyxis under my name." And he was like, "Why, I can't give that much to her." You're right. And so she ended up getting Tylenol number 3 and did just fine with that. So had we given that to her, we all know what would have happened. So let's see. Da-da-da. All right. So I was just looking to see if there was any questions. So there's a couple things that I think are going on. So with the lack of advocacy in healthcare, there's going to be several factors. Part of this is when I went to nursing school, and I was talking to my boss about this today. She's been a nurse for 42 years. That was nursing 101. One of the first items you were taught was advocacy and patient care. I mean, the number 3 leading cause of death is medical mistakes. That's pretty big. That's a big deal. Um, and I'm like, "Weren't you taught that in school?" And she's like, "Absolutely." And I'm like, "Is it not being taught in school?" Um, so I don't know. I asked a nurse that today from a hospital, and yeah, she was not very kind. I just asked her if when she was in nursing school, did they teach patient advocacy because it's a part of her code of ethics to have that and to follow that. So I was a lot of things, and then she hung up, and that's okay too. I don't really care. My "I give a damn" is broken, right? So part of the reason I think we have some trouble with this advocacy is going to be fear of retaliation, just like that nurse I was talking about. They're in fear of losing their jobs because they'll tell you that you're going to lose your job, your license, whatever. It's never going to happen. You absolutely have the right to refuse, as does every single patient has the right to refuse any kind of medicine, any kind of treatment, surgery, inoculation, doesn't matter. Absolutely has the right to refuse at any time. They can check out AMA at any time unless they are psych. And even then, there are things around that. So they still have rights. Another item, which I'm going to guess, in my opinion, this is probably the biggest one, is corporate control. It's where hospitals and healthcare systems are driven by profits, insurance policies, and government regulations rather than patient centered care. And when they say government regulations, that's going to be that Standard of Care Act. And if you don't know what that is, I recommend you go down the rabbit hole and look that up. Another thing is overworked and burnout. So the patient to nurse ratios has changed. It changed during COVID and they never went back to what it had been. So it's not really a safe level. They don't really worry about safety of the patient. They claim it, they'll have those mission and vision statements. I laugh at those. I will go to those and be like, "Really? You you have that on the wall?" And I said that to one of them at the bigger hospital that I worked at one time, and I'm like, "What a joke." I'm like, "If I was an attorney for a family, I'd be taking pictures of your mission and vision statement, and I'd be like, 'Here we go.'" And they've changed that mission and vision statement. It was actually like 2.5 paragraphs. It actually is like 1.5 sentences now. Just that we wanna be the, hospital of choice for employees and patients. That's what it says. And if I could remember what it said before, but it was just like, we want to do this and we're going to give good care and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, the nurses want to give good care, but we're not staffed appropriately. So I would say some of it's that. Compliance culture is another thing. Many nurses are being trained to follow protocols without questioning authority, even when those protocols may not be in the best interest of the patient, which is scary. The patient's the whole reason that we're there. We're not there to get a paycheck. We're not there to find a man, marry a doctor, or marry another nurse or anesthesiologist. Our job is to be there to take care of patients. Lack of education on true advocacy. Nursing schools emphasize advocacy in theory, but in practice, they often condition students to conform to the system rather than challenge it. That's a big key. Uh, so you just have to know that when you go in, there may not be a lot of advocacy going on, and you have to be your own advocate. Um, Nurses are supposed to be the patient advocate. It is part of the code of ethics. But unfortunately, the reality is advocacy comes with risk, and not every nurse is willing or able to take those risks. I don't know if I believe that. I believe you have to do the right thing. Um, you either have to have integrity or you don't. So, my integrity, morals, values, and ethics are not for sale. And I will stand on that principle till the day I die. And I may be broke when I die, and that's okay too. So I'll go over what the American Nursing Association's Code of Ethics. It lays out the fundamental principles that guide nursing practice. Okay. It emphasizes patient advocacy. That's its number one. Number two is integrity. There's that word. Third is professional responsibility. So, some key provisions that are related to advocacy are the respect for the patient's human dignity. Nurses must respect the inherent dignity, worth, rights of all of the patients that they are taking care of. This is a big one that you don't see a lot of anymore. Um, yeah. No, another one is primary commitment to the patient. A nurse's first duty is to the patient, whether it's an individual, family, group, or community. Advocacy for patients' rights. Nurses must protect the health, safety, and rights of patients, ensuring they receive informed consent and ethical treatment. Accountability and responsibility. Nurses are responsible for their actions and their decisions, ensuring they align with ethical and professional standards. Duties beyond institutional policies. If an institution's policies or practices harm patients, nurses are expected to advocate for change, even if it means challenging authority. Um, yeah. And I mean, you know, I, the first time I had to do this in the hospital setting, I mean, I hadn't had my RN degree for a month. And I had to, say, no, we're not going to do that, or I'm not going to do that. If you want to do that, that's something you can do. This is why. And I always gave scientific rationale as to this is why, this is the patient, and you give and be like, "Are you sure this is the right person?" I've had that happen at least 5 times at that hospital, um, and not with the same physician. So, I mean, it's not well, there was one that was really bad, but I won't go into him. He doesn't have his license in the state of Illinois anymore or Iowa. But anyway, um, it can be scary, and especially if you're not somebody who is strong-willed and you have a really good backbone, um, if it's something is right, then it's right. So I guess that's just been my existence. While these ethics are written, the culture of many healthcare systems discourage true advocacy. Many nurses find themselves caught between their ethical obligations and institutional pressures. But those pressures are not going to keep your ass out of court, and they are not going to help you when the judge asks you if you should have known that that was the wrong thing to give. Um, these pressures often lead to moral distress, burnout, and even retaliation when they push back against harmful policies. Been there, done that. Um, Advocacy isn't just about following rules, it's about having the courage to uphold them even when it is hard. Another act, there's multiple acts that fall, the ethics code and things like that, that the nurses have to follow. So we're very mandated to do these things, and yet facilities and especially corporate ran facilities, they don't want that. That doesn't make them big money. It's bow your head, keep doing what you're told to do, and push on through. And it's never worried about how that patient outcome is. And I can promise you that when a mistake is made, I'd say over half percent of the time, you'll never know that it was a mistake that was made. It'll never make it into the patient's chart. So, this is what I was taught in nursing school. If I get an order that I do not agree with, part of my nurse's notes is talking about received this order, called back doctor, disagreement of whether this is what is needed for patient because of this possible outcome. Let's say they're allergic to this medication. I'm not giving it. Anaphylaxis is like their allergic reaction. I'm not giving it. So I would put that in my notes. Well, that's part of their medical record. So I was taught that you always put in everything that's going on, what time you called the doctor, what he said, da da da. They're being told not to do that now, which is, I mean, it really is illegal, but anyway. So that would be part of the record. So I will just tell you that I can guarantee you that half of these you would never know it as a family member unless you're medical. So you have to stay on top of these things. Another thing that kind of governs nurses is the Nurse Practice Act. These are state specific. Every single state is different. If you are licensed, like I am licensed in multiple states, um, I'm not in a nurse like where they have multiple states in it. I am individually licensed out in these different states, but you have to know the Nurse Practice Act for each of those, wherever you are licensed, wherever you are working, that you're going to be under. Um, so let's see. So it's state specific, and it will define the scope of practice, responsibilities, and regulations for the nurse. It is designed to protect the public by ensuring that nurses meet specific standards of care and practice within their legal boundaries. So key components of this are scope of practice, and that's kind of like a job description. If you want to put it in those kind of terms, it defines what nurses as RNs, LPNs, advanced practice nurses, what they can and cannot do within their role. You have your license requirements where you have to have so many, like you have to pass an NCLEX in the state to do this. You have certain amount of education you have to meet. And then you have continuing education that you have to do to obtain and to maintain your license, whether it be an every 2-year license, every 3-year license. You have your standards of care, which establish guidelines for safe and ethical nursing practice. Sounds great, except you're up against a lot of outside entities that you have to kind of fight. Um, so, disciplinary actions. Okay, so this is for the nurses in the back. Details what constitute unprofessional conduct and the penalties, license suspension, revocation, etc. for violations. And let me tell you what etc. means. Etc. means jail, prison time, okay? And it has happened, and fines. Um, Different parts of the healthcare system have different regulations. So in surgery, in cardiac cath lab, we can take a verbal order from a physician. So, like, they're standing there and like, we need epi, we need nitro, we need whatever. We can pull that out of the Pyxis verbally. They just have to end up writing that order after we do it. On the floor has to be written out. You can take a phone order, but anyway, for the most part, on the floor, you need a written order. What happens and has happened is the doctor has called out meds for these people. They pull it and give it. A bad outcome comes out, and then they refuse to sign to make up the order. So, what I taught people when I was precepting them is no matter what situation you're in, you hand them that green little piece of paper that is progress note, and you put a sticker on the bottom with the patient's name on it because you have the stickers with their names on it, and they can fill it out. I will never pull meds out of a Pyxis, no matter what, because if they don't back you, then you're going down, and you will. They had a nurse who did prison time because of this. Okay, so it's a big deal. Delegation rules is another thing. So as nurses, we can delegate certain things that we need done, whether that be walking the patient or not giving meds, necessarily, unless you have a licensed practical nurse that you're working with who your institution allows to pass those meds or do IV flushes or different things. But we can delegate those. We also can delegate to unlicensed personnel depending what the task is and what the conditions are. Okay. So, like during COVID, they took people who were not CNAs, had never went through those classes, basically gave them about a 3-hour course, and boom, they were CNAs. Whether that was correct or not, that's what happened. So why does it matter? Okay. So this protects nurses from being forced to work outside their legal scope. And it happens. It happens where physicians want you to do something that you're like, this is not my scope of practice. But it also protects you, just like I had said a few weeks ago about that doctor who's an endocrinologist who was mad that his patient is no longer diabetic and was like, I'm going to go after your license. I'm like, I am within my scope of practice. You know, you have to know what your scope of practice says. Okay. So it holds nurses accountable for their actions. And I promise you, will be held accountable. It ensures patient safety by maintaining high standards of practice. But that's only if you, as a nurse, follow it. You have got to be the one to follow it. You've got to stand up and do the right thing, even if it's painful. I mean, you just have to do it. You just have to think about, I guess this is how I was trained. Each patient, you should treat them as though they're a family member of yours, because this is somebody's mother, brother, father, whatever. They deserve the best care just as your own family member would. And if you treat every patient and think of them as though they were a family member, I don't think you can go wrong in that. And that's how I was trained to do it. So that's how I'm always going to do it. That will never be changed, or I probably will just not be a nurse. Like I said, each state has its own Nurse Practice Act. It's enforced by the State Board of Nursing. If you're advocating for yourself or your patients, knowing your state's Nurse Practice Act is crucial. It helps you stand your ground legally and ethically. Um, so that is my soapbox. I know that was a lot. I feel like I stayed very well behaved and I didn't freak out, even though I want to, because there's been a lot of crap. So, um, I'll probably do an extra video next week. I've got some stuff I need to do tonight. Um, I'm gonna I've got some stuff for next week, but I'm going to go over one next week, and it's basically going to go over things that every person needs to have, whether you're single, married, elderly, 25, just had your first baby, whatever it is. There are certain things that you really should have, legal documents that you should have. So I'm going to go over, there is quite a lengthy list. As I was making this up, I was like, I've got this and this. And I was like, crap, I don't have this or this. So yeah. Let's see. PM look is about. Oh, so Simpson, yeah. I don't know, Simpson. You must have bumped into something. Uh oh, you're on vacation. Well, where are you at, Simpson? That's cool. I need a vacation. I need to go somewhere I can just shoot guns all day long. Not at people, at targets for the most part. Anyway, so hey Don, how are you? Tara says, this was good information. I think I have been blessed with excellent nurses in my lifetime. That's great. I'm glad you have. A says, hello, Laura. Audrey here. I have a vaccine question. Is it advisable for an expectant mother to take a whooping cough vaccine twice? My daughter's baby doctor said she should. Oof. What I would recommend is going out and go look up what happens to the human body and the immune system when you take any kind of inoculation. Um, and all I can tell you is for myself, when I was pregnant, I did not, none, nothing. Um, and if I had to do all over again with both of my children, they would not have gotten vitamin K. They would not have gotten Hep B because I don't think they're going to be having sex or dirty needle contact in the first few years of life. I'm not sure why that needs to be given within hours of birth. So I think anytime you introduce something into the body, I think you have to be very, very careful. I mean, we tell expectant mothers not to eat like raw seafood, but we can put this that has, mm, I think I would think hard and long on that. So yeah. Simpson says just a mini one in Minneapolis. Hey, but that's okay. Meeting the kids and doing a few things. Awesome. Well, good for you. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys for being here. If you have any questions or comments, throw them in there, and I will absolutely try to get back to you tonight, tomorrow, whenever. If you're watching the replay, go ahead and put your questions in there. I will answer them whenever they show up. I do appreciate you guys being here. If you like this, hit the like button. Subscribe if you want to, if you like to hear my craziness. And I will see you guys on the flip side. So, as I'm going to say it, even though we went over nothing to do with carnivore or keto, I'm going to say what I always do: meet, heat, eat, and repeat, and advocate. See ya.